Hola y bienvenidos a Sex and Spanglish, where we empower mujeres to get in touch with their bodies, own their pleasure, and where we discuss all the cochinadas our abuelas didn't tell us about. I'm Ana Lopez, sexpert, future doctora, certified sex and life coach, proud Latina, and your go-to guide for all things sex. I'm here to help you kick vergüenza to the curb and teach you to have guilt-free sexual pleasure. Basically, I'm here to help you have mind-blowing sex without all the guilt and shame you learned growing up. Let's be real. La comunidad latina doesn't talk about sex, pero que suerte tienes because this Latina does. It is my vision to have Latinas worldwide discussing sex with one another just like they do with chisme. Así que, prepárate. I'm about to change the way you view sex para siempre. Hola, and welcome back to another episode of the Sex and Spanglish podcast. Today is the first episode in a series I will be doing on the cost of being a woman. So when I say cost, I mean financial cost. I also mean health cost, so both physical and mental, and how all of this impacts our sex lives and how it is detrimental to our sex lives if we are not careful. And today we're going to be talking about the pink tax. So I'll get into what that is in just a second. And then from there, we'll talk about how that is impacting our sex lives. So I recently started listening to this podcast called The Financial Feminist. And you have to listen to it. It is fucking amazing. It is such a good podcast. I'm going to link to it in the show notes. I know it's finances and not sex, but both two taboo topics, so it goes hand in hand, and it's a really good podcast. But anyways, she had a guest on there, and she was talking about, they started talking about the pink tax, and it got me really interested. So I've known what the pink tax is for a really long time, and the thing is that prior to recording this episode, I never really paid too much attention to the intricacies or how much this actually is impacting me and anyone in my household that is purchasing. So this majorly impacts those of us that have been socialized as women, right? This majorly impacts women, but it impacts consumers everywhere depending on what they buy, right? So what is the pink tax? So basically, the pink tax is a tax that all consumers pay, so anyone that is buying shit at the store, that consumers pay simply for buying products that have been targeted towards women. So if you are a man listening to this and you are buying a razor that has been targeted towards women, you are going to pay more, simply because it is an item that has been targeted towards women. And so I'm going to read you an excerpt from this article from listenmoneymatters.com. I will link to this in the show notes. It kind of gives you an overview. So it says the New York City Department of Consumer Affairs released a study comparing the prices of over 800 products. 800 products. The study's goal was to estimate the price differences male and female shoppers face when buying the same types of items. The results? Products for women and girls cost 7% more than comparable products for men and boys. 7% more for toys and accessories, 4% more for children's clothing, 8% more for adult clothing, 13% more for personal care products, and 8% more for senior or home health care products. That is fucking ridiculous. Now, there's a little bit more in this article that I would love to dive into, but that is, it's a lot. So I would just link to it. Please read it. I think that it's super important to learn more about this. I'm going to be learning more about this myself in, the coming weeks and months, because I never really paid too much attention to it. And as I was listening to that podcast yesterday, I was like, I started thinking about the cost of being a woman, right? Like the literal cost that we are literally paying more taxes for things that we need to buy because these things also include like tampons and pads that we literally have to fucking buy, right? And so, I started thinking about that. And I also started thinking about gender roles and like the stress and pressures that come with that, and how ultimately that impacts our sex lives. So that's kind of where I'm going with this series. And I know I kind of went off on a tangent there, but I really encourage you to learn more, read more about this pink tax and see how it plays out in your own life, and in the lives of the women in your circles. So as I mentioned before, I am super I'm the person that's going to buy the same shit all the time, no matter the price. I don't care if they could charge me $20 more. I like what I like, and I'm going to continue buying it. That being said, I thought it was super important to start comparing these prices and take a look for myself how this pink tax is affecting consumers, even if it isn't necessarily impacting me for this particular area, right? And we'll talk in a little bit about the other areas in which it impacts you. So I compared a few products, and I will go over them one by one. So at Target, the first thing, this is all from Target.com, by the way, so you can look it up yourself. So I researched I looked up women's disposable razors. So at Target, they have the Up and Up brand, so the Target brand of razors. They have a 2 count and they have a 5 count that you can buy. The 5 count is $4.89. So it's 5 razors for $4.89. And on the front, it actually says value pack, which is kind of funny to me. And you'll see why in just a second. So then I looked up the men's equivalent. There's only one size available, right? And it's not a 2 count. It's not a 5 count. It is a fucking 8 count of the razors that are targeted towards men. They are $4.89. Same exact price, $3 more. And these are both targeted, or these are both for sensitive skin. So it's not like, oh, these are just like the cheapo ones, whatever, right? These are both supposedly for sensitive skin. Comparing them to a name brand, $4.89 for an 8 count for men, and $4.89 for a 5 count for women. Ridiculous. They're both disposable. And what I found even more interesting is that the men's one doesn't say value pack, but the women's does. And what I've been learning recently as I've been diving more into finances, sorry, there's a thunderstorm about to start, so you're probably hearing that. So if I run off to shut my window, don't worry, I will be back. Anyway, what I've been learning as I'm learning about finances and is that the financial information that is targeted towards women often talks about saving money. So couponing, living frugally, things like that, whereas men are taught to invest. And so I find it super interesting that on the women's package, it says value pack. So that's the first example. The second example I looked up were t-shirts. So a women's t-shirt, so this is Universal Thread is the brand, and I think this is just something that is sold at Target. And so a women's V-neck t-shirt, it's just like a basic black tee, they have other colors, whatever, but same price for all of them, $8. I looked at the plus size because oftentimes those are more expensive. Those are also $8. So regardless of the size that you're getting, it is $8, even if you get like a 4X, right? All of them, $8. The men's shirt, the men's equivalent, so Universal Thread men sizing, $6. Like, what? First of all, if we're going to argue, because this is slightly tangential, but there's often the argument that plus size clothing is, they charge more for plus size clothing because of the material, right? This is often an argument because this is also a thing that happens with plus size individuals, right? They end up paying more just because of the size. And the argument is often that, oh, it's because they're using more materials. Well, if that is the case, like, I don't know. I don't manufacture clothes. I don't know how it fucking works. I don't know. However, if that is the argument, then why are they also charging men less money than the women's clothing? Because if that is the argument, that if it is true that they need to charge more for more fabric that is used, the men's sizes are bigger. So that doesn't make any fucking sense. I digress. Anyways, $6 versus $8 for the same shirt. The third product that I looked up was body wash. So I looked up Dove because those were like two comparable products. So a Dove 22 ounce, just a basic like body wash. So it's a Dove Deep Moisture Hydrating Body Wash for dry skin. $6.99 for a 22 ounce. Now this is typically a wash. So this isn't necessarily like a female wash, right? Like it's not for your vulva. It's just a basic body wash. However, in the advertisement for it, in the pictures, it is a woman using it. And so it is targeted towards women. We are often, skincare is targeted towards us. And so I will definitely argue that this is targeted towards women. Again, it's a 22 ounce for $6.99. The men's equivalent, it is, I'm just now noticing it's 18 ounces. It's $6.49. So it is less, although it is less ounces. However, if we did it ounce by ounce, there's actually a 5-cent difference. So for the female body wash, or the body wash that is targeted towards women, is 36 cents per ounce. And for the men's body wash is 31 cents per ounce. Like, this is mind-blowing to me. And I know some people might be thinking like, well, it's only 5 cents. Like, it's 5 cents per ounce. Like, there are 18 to 22 ounces in this bottle. Like, that shit adds up. And this is not a one-time purchase. And even if it was, it doesn't fucking matter. Like, this is ridiculous. And so I just kind of wanted to demonstrate how this plays out, like when we go and purchase things at the store. And I haven't looked too much into this because it's not really something that I can do anything about. But tampons, pads, menstrual discs, basically things that are used for your menstrual cycle, are often taxed as a luxury tax. So we are taxed more because it's a quote unquote luxury item, when we obviously all know that that is not a fucking luxury. That is not something that I would wish upon anyone. So the last piece of information that I want to share about the pink tax before I get into how this is impacting your sex lives, which I'm pretty sure that's why you're all here listening to this podcast, is information from a site called sequincard.com. And I will link this in the show notes. It's definitely a company that I support. And they basically help you to raise your credit score. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely check them out. But anyways, this is from their page. They talk about the pink tax. So it says pink tax. You pay more for everyday products and services 42% of the time. So that means almost half of the time you are paying more for shit that you need to buy. Student debt. Women graduate with 15% more student debt than men. Caregiving. Women are more likely to take on caregiver responsibilities to children and elderly. And this also means, forfeiting income, paying more for shit that you gotta buy, right? Salary, 18% lower than men on average. Real estate. There are higher mortgage rates for women, even though women are more likely to pay them back. Healthcare costs. 33% higher healthcare costs than men over lifetime. Retirement. They live longer on average, requiring more capital 80% of the time. And finally, credit score. They receive lower credit lines, they being women, due to a lack of credit history, artificially lowering credit worthiness. Now, we could go into a whole other direction, a whole other episode about the, finances and, the history of finances, particularly as it pertains to women, but that is not what this podcast is about. So I definitely encourage you to check out The Financial Feminist. There are also a few other financial podcasts that are Latina run or hosted, I guess. So I can link to those in the show notes as well. But let's talk about sex. How the fuck does all of this, how does men's body wash being more expensive than women's body wash impact your sex life? If things cost more, you typically have stress, especially if they cost more than the money that you have, right? So if you only have $5 in your bank account and your body wash costs $6.50, then you're fucked, right? And so that's on the most basic level, right? Typically, finances are a place of stress for many people, especially Americans. And it is a cause for strain in a lot of relationships. It is a cause for divorce in many marriages. It can be very stressful, especially when we are being taught that we are quote unquote bad with money, when we aren't taught to handle our money, right? Because often many of us, especially you first gen folks, second and third gen even, don't come from families with money. We are coming from immigrant families that don't have a fucking penny to their name, right? So we aren't taught about finances, and we also don't fucking have them. So it can be stressful, and it is stressful for many, many people. And this isn't just acute stress, right? This is a chronic stressor. And the reason for that is because this is something that continues. You are constantly going to be worried about money if you don't change, right? If you don't learn more about finances, get a handle on them, increase your income. And I'm not saying that this is all your fault at all. We are socialized to believe that we are horrible with money, that we don't know what the fuck we're doing, that we don't have the ability to earn money, right? And then there's also systems in place where we, the wage gap, for example. Latinas earn the least amount of income out of all the fucking people in the United States. So there are systems in place that are against us, but there are also things that we can do that are in our power, right? To kind of combat these systems. It is possible. But I say all that to say that we have these added stressors as women, and even more so as Latinas, that we are dealing with. We have to combat this chronic stress. And this is just one part of the stress. We have a ton of other chronic stressors that we'll be talking about in this series, and this is just one of them. So what the fuck does this have to do with sex? If you are stressed out all the time, you are going to be in a constant fight or flight response, which just means that your nervous system is activated and it thinks that something's wrong. Something is, going to happen. We're in danger, right? The body, the brain are in danger. So you're unable to relax. You're unable to become aroused, or it's harder to become aroused, or it's not as satisfying when you become aroused. It's harder to orgasm. And if you do orgasm, oftentimes it's less intense because your body is like, bitch, why are we having sex? And I'm using bitch as an endearing term, by the way. But bitch, why the fuck we having sex? There's a lion coming or whatever, right? Because when we experience stressors, our body thinks we're fucking dying. Our brain thinks we're dying. It's oh shit, we're anxious or we're stressed. That means there's a fucking lion chasing after us, right? And so it's like, okay, when that stress response, that fight or flight response is activated, that means that it's time to act. Danger is near. But that danger in modern day society is finances, not having $6.50 to fucking pay for body wash. But your brain doesn't know the difference. And so it's like, bitch, why are you trying to masturbate right now? Why are you trying to have sex? Like, there's a fucking lion over here. Like, don't you fucking see that? But the lion is the $6.50 body wash, the negative amount in your bank account. And so it makes sense that you are having trouble becoming aroused, you're having trouble orgasming, you're having trouble relaxing or paying attention. Oftentimes this can, chronic stress can lead to lack of focus, right? So you're having sex and thinking about like the fucking dishes or something, right? And your partner's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go down on you. And you're like, la la la, like you're not even fucking paying attention, right? And it's because you have this chronic stressor. So what do we do about this? So before I begin, I just want to mention that it started raining, so you may hear that in the background. Anyway, what can we do about this? You're like, okay, yeah, I'm getting charged more for basic necessities, right? And now it's impacting my sex life. Like, I don't have any power over how much Target charges me for body wash, for example, right? Like I can buy men's body wash, but I still have to buy pads or tampons, things like that. And I get that. And so I think there are many things that we can do about this, but here are the solutions that I'm going to provide. The first thing that I will say is that if you are in a position where you are financially struggling, I definitely encourage you to learn more about finances to help you get into a place where you are more financially stable. So whether that means changing jobs, even though you have a job that you love, right? Maybe getting a second job if that's feasible for you, right? Just really, whatever that looks like for you. And just really, I encourage you to get financially stable for many reasons, right? I have been put in positions before by myself that I've been like financially dependent on people, and I don't want to be there again. And so I definitely encourage everyone listening, especially women, to become financially stable. Again, I'm going to post some resources in the comments. So definitely, start learning about finances. Really get intimate with your finances as well. I know that a lot of us ignore our finances, just like we ignore our bodies. And so just like I tell you to get intimate with your body, get intimate with your finances. So that being said, according to Emily and Amelia Nagoski, dealing with the stressor itself, so the stressor being the finances in this case, does not mean that the stress goes away. So what that means is that if you all of a sudden, become rich or even just like financially stable, that doesn't mean that the stress is going to go away. So dealing with the stressor is just part of it. And so I'm going to read you a segment out of their book, Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. Again, it's by Emily and Amelia Nagoski. I am going to link to this in the show notes. It is an amazing book that talks about stress and burnout and how to alleviate it, solve it for good, and kind of prevent burnout from happening again. So it says, just because you've dealt with a stressor, that doesn't mean you've dealt with the stress itself. Again, the stressor is like the finances, for example, or the thing that's causing the stress. The stress itself is what is happening in your body. That feeling that you have, like when you feel stressed out, that's the stress. And it says, and you have to deal with the stress. So what's happening in your body? Complete the cycle or it will slowly kill you. And in this book, it talks about how to complete the cycle. And stress cycles can actually go on for a really long time. So it's important to complete those cycles. It says physical activity is the single most efficient strategy for completing the cycle, even if it's just jumping up and down or a good old cry. Affection, a 6-second kiss, a 20-second hug, 6 minutes of snuggling after sex, helpless laughter, are social strategies that complete the cycle along with creative self-expression. Writing, drawing, singing, whatever gives you a safe place to move through the emotional cycle of stress. Wellness, quote unquote, is the freedom to move fluidly through the cycles of being human. Wellness is thus not a state of being, it is a state of action. So I really encourage you to read this book more in depth. But essentially the steps to alleviating this is, yes, I think definitely tackling it from the, especially if you're like action oriented like me, like, yes, become financially stable, work towards that. It's not going to happen overnight, and that's totally okay. That's totally understandable. I think dealing with that stressor, one, and also deal with the stress, learn to, handle stress and to complete those stress cycles. Because once you can do that, you are going to be able to relax even more in order to be able to have better sex, to really be able to be present and in that moment. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns about this, as always, send me a text. My phone number is 669-200-9269. I'd love to hear what you think about this episode. I will see y'all in the next episode. If you like what you heard, be sure to hit the subscribe button to be notified when new episodes are released. Join me every week to hear me talk about orgasms, STIs, birth control, and all the other cochinadas your abuela didn't tell you about. But that's not all. We'll also discuss machismo, la tía metiche, and sexual stories from other Latinas just like you. And if you're ready to start spicing up your sex life tonight, then be sure to download my free ebook, Spice It Up con la Sex Coach. You'll find the link to download it in the show notes. Do you have an idea for a podcast episode? Send me a text at 669-200-9269 and tell me all about it. And finally, let's keep in touch. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Sex in Spanglish. Be sure to follow me and let me know you heard this episode. Espero verte pronto.